knows I'd just gotten out of the hospital, and I thought, am I really up to this? And then I remembered one fall day in 2004, I went in for my private lesson, and she was sitting there next to the Victrola with a handkerchief over her mouth that was soaked with blood. Earlier that day, she had had all of her teeth extracted. But my lesson came first, and there was to be no nonsense about it. It was 1-2 shuffle ball change, and I felt like I was looking at a little ancient vampire lady up there. And slowly, after a few minutes, she just sort of crumbled down to the floor, and I put a towel behind her head, and she said, well, yes, maybe she should go home and rest. This book never would have happened if she had not agreed to give me some music lessons on her old piano. It was in the piano in the come in. Oh my goodness.
Well, there's not a lot of material.
Well, there's two.
There's two different ones like it.
Well, you just arrange it so
People would have as many friends, Mary Ruth.
This book never would have happened if she had not agreed to give me some music lessons on her old piano, because it was in the piano room where we would play, and then she would sit and she would start to tell me a story. And my jaw just dropped more and more, and I said, where are these stories? And she said, so I said, we have to change that. We have to start recording. And so we did. I recorded and transcribed and edited, and with the help of Sir Speedy, we created this little book. Now, I'm going to ask Jacqueline Dorminy to come and inspire me with her personality and her energy. My dears, at this very moment, there is someone in your life that needs this book. And I'll tell you why. They need to hear how I always dreamed big and made plans. And when opportunity knocks, as she always does, I would open that door wide and grab her with both hands. And I'll tell them how we need to help each other along this journey. The great Maker has blessed you and me with such great gifts, and it feels so good to help another person and to be someone that can make a difference. Wherever I went and whatever I did, I just loved being there and doing that. Sometimes it was tough, but things always worked out. And I will surprise you. Oh, brother, will I surprise you. Cute. It's 1932, at the height of the Great Depression, when a young woman of 25 arrives in Winston-Salem with her husband, J. Dorminy. He's a traveling salesman for Swift and Company, and very soon he'll leave her for another woman. And she lets him go, but she likes the name Dorminy, and decides to keep it. Soon thereafter, she rents the elegant ballroom, the Palm Room, at the downtown Zinzendorf Hotel to offer dance classes to the 15 young ladies who've already signed up. Within weeks, that number has grown to 400. The Zinzendorf is a gold mine for Jacqueline, a rest stop for people passing through, and for entertainers of all persuasions traveling between New York and Miami. These patrons would have been curious about the goings-on in the ballroom on the first floor. They might look in and see this young woman practicing tap and ballet, teaching a class, rehearsing her speeches, or dancing a tango with a partner. So where did this woman come from? She would tell you that she was born Mattie Claude Lancaster in South Georgia in 1907, the third of 8 children. Now that's a mighty countrified name. But consider that her mother's maiden name was Ida Mae Cootie. They lived on a farm in a house, log house built by her grandfather, with a well on the front porch and a horse and buggy for transportation to church and to town. She attended grades 1 through 3 in a one-room schoolhouse built by her grandfather, and when she was 10 years old, she moved to Hawkinsville, Georgia. The family did, 8 miles away, and that was 1916. Now you may think that is pretty primitive stuff, but by the time Mattie Claude was 12 years old, she had steady employment, and she was text messaging. After school, she worked for Mrs. Buff, who designed ladies' hats and dresses, and Miss Buff taught her Morse code, and they used telegraph equipment to connect Mattie Claude in the hat shop with Miss Buff in her office downstairs. And this will be my first little reading here. One day I went across the street to the telegraph office and listened to the incoming messages. "What are all those numbers?" She said, "That's the stock market for cotton all over the United States. They're sending the cotton futures. You know, the South is a great cotton country." And the prices were flashing from New York to Miami and from Macon, Georgia, all over the world. When the telegraph was quiet, I reached over and tapped out a message. I reached over, well, I guess I should stop. Okay. I reached over and tapped out a message. "Since you people are so smart, write me about making hats." About 10 operators responded. The local operator said, "They're calling you." Soon I was talking all over the country to the Western Union operators. Now, Hawkinsville, Virginia, Georgia, was an interesting place. They had an opera house that was built in 1907, and they gave top billing to famous entertainers and politicians from all over the country. So there was, and next I'm going to tell you how Mattie Claude became Jacqueline. It would have been 1923 when she arrived at the University of Georgia. She's 17 years old, and she goes to the president of the University of Georgia in Athens. She asks for a job, and he says, "We know a lot about you. They tell me you can sew." "Well, yes, I made costumes in high school." "All right, you're going to be head of the costume department of the University of Georgia." He walked me over, and "Let me show you what the costume department looks like." And he walked me over to the next building, opened the door to a long room about 40 feet long. In the middle of the floor was a pile of clothes. I'd never seen such a mess. They were the costumes the people of Athens had given to the school. And as I stood staring at that mountain of clothes, he said, "This is yours, Jack. Do whatever you want to it. Thank you." And he walked out. No one had ever called me Jack before. Right then and there, I decided my name would be Jack, short for Jacqueline. I've never been fond of Mattie Claude. So she ironed and she pressed and she fixed and she washed, and she offered these clothes. Put a message up on the board. "Tell your people at your schools we have beautiful costumes to rent for their plays." And the people began to come in and rent the costumes. Well, sir, I had money enough to pay for school. I had money enough for the next year. So now I can refer to her adventures as Jack Tales. Jack completed a 4-year program at the University of Georgia in 3 years with a straight A average, earning a Bachelor of Arts degree and a second major in drama. all the time working year-round to pay for her education. The summer she turned 20, she applied for a job with a cruise ship company and was hired to perform as a dancer at night and give ballroom lessons to the passengers during the day. For 3 summers, she danced on the ships and traveled to many ports of call. The last ship was the Queen Mary, which is now harbored in Long Beach, California. During the school years, she taught English and drama in Americus, Georgia. And I said, here's a story you have to hear. I tell you, there are so many good stories that it was very hard for. She came to teach, and the principal said, there are some boys in your class that make all the teachers cry. And she went in the classroom and she saw these 4 boys sitting on the back row. And she said, these are country boys that need an education. And she said, y'all back there, I'm going to need your help. Now you come up here on the front row. And she sent all the little smart ones to the back. Now do you know how to hammer a nail? Well, yes, I help build our house. Well, we're going to need you to be to make some scenery for this play that we're going to do. And then she said, now, and she gave them all an assignment. She sent them home, had them read something and write something. She looked, she said, now, I don't want anything, has to be an A, B, or C. We're not getting anything lower in this class. And she got these papers back. She said, my God, they were illiterate. Maybe 3rd grade level. What was she going to do? And she went home and she wrote on those papers, I'm giving you A for effort. Now you take these papers home and have them signed by your parents. These were the proudest boys. So the play they did was called Mrs. Wiggs of the Poultry Yard, and those boys helped build the scenery and everything she needed. But in the poultry yard, in the drama thing, they needed to have roosters and chickens. So these boys brought the rooster and the chickens, and they made a container for the chickens. And the rooster, when they wanted him to crow, they showed him corn, and he'd crow, and they'd feed him. And when they needed the hens to cackle, they'd take a puppy and throw it in the enclosure with the chickens, and he'd chase them, and they'd holler. There was much more going on backstage than there was on the front stage. So she had them in the palm of her hand, and hopefully they got an education. Let's see, but let's return. Oh, no. This is the best part. So the night came for this great musical show. They started her with an empty room, not a stick of furniture. And she had people bring in all their broken stuff, and these boys fixed it and built the stuff. And so she was supposed to get all the money from what she raised. The night came for this great musical show. The children had sold the tickets, and the money flowed in. I collected $176.60. So this is back in, 1923. I had the script and the music and the piano and a piano teacher to play. We went backstage. We were backstage and ready to start, and the principal came there and said to me, now you're supposed to give me the money you've taken in. And I looked at him and I said, this is my money. I've already bought a piano for my classroom, and I owe him $150 for that. You're not going to do any such thing. You're going to give me that money. It belongs to the school. And the man walked up to me and slapped the tar out of me right in the face. And all the cast saw it. And I said, uh-oh, it's getting rough now. Well, you can break my neck, but this money's going to pay for that piano. So I walked right smack out onto the stage in front of the curtains, and I said, well, I have some news to tell you wonderful people. And people were clapping because the children liked me so much. And he says, I'm holding the money I've taken in, and this money's to pay for the piano. And a moment ago, the principal tried to make me give him the money, and I wouldn't. He slapped hell out of me. And then the Methodist preacher got up and asked the audience to stand and pray. And he stood on the stage, and I stood on my stage, and he prayed for the people to calm down, and he prayed no more insults to the teacher who worked so hard, And he said they felt the Lord agreed. The Lord money need to go to pay for the piano. And prayed the principal would see the light of day. And he prayed on and on and on. And after a while, he said, amen. And everybody sat down. I announced the first act, curtain opened. We put on that musical and the principal left. So let's return to Winston-Salem in 1932. Jack hits town like a tornado. Everywhere she goes, her reputation follows her. She'd been here 4 days. You can look at pictures in the books. Mom, pass some of those books out. Starting on page 34, you can see the house where she grew up. And we've been in Winston-Salem for 4 days, and Mr. Sam's called. He owned the wonderful old Opera House in Winston-Salem, which of course isn't here anymore. That week there were billboards up all over town announcing a grand show and the orchestra from Harvard University. Mr. Sam said to me, I understand you can do a whole show by yourself. Is this true? Mr. Sams, I have played from Maine to Miami, from the Atlantic to the Pacific, and right at this special time I have 24 hours of memory work. I can give you as much entertainment for 4 days and 4 nights if you just give me a cup of water in between. Well, I think you're the one I'm looking for, and he handed her a letter where those folks were not coming. And so, do you think you could do it? Well, I said, laughing, I would suggest a variety show. I have worlds of memory work, and I speak 4 dialects. Can we say you'll do the weekend? I can do the whole month if you want it. As for scenery, I told him to build me an arbor with a little bench so I could sit there and play my mandolin and fill that arbor with fresh lilacs. And I was in this gorgeous colonial outfit. I had made yards of white satin with beautiful ruffles down to the floor. It had drop shoulders. And I began the show, and she does this show, and she does this for a while, and now it starts to look like they're bored, and she unhitches her skirt and steps out of it. She's in a gypsy costume, and she plays with that for a while. I want you to know that the next afternoon when the show opened, the waiting line reached from the auditorium across Liberty Street to the old post office. The house was jammed. On Friday I did 2 shows, 3 on Saturday, 4 on Sunday. I had the best time performing the numbers I had done all over the United States. So, then she goes down and rents the Zinsdorf Hotel. And she really had it going on. The Zinzendorf was a happening place. She didn't have to go to singles clubs or datematch.com or anywhere else to find men. They came to her. And this story will tell you about Jack and the flavor of that time. Now, there are way too many good stories for me to read, and Lord mercy, here we go. I was down on my hands and knees cleaning the ballroom floor at the Palm Room. The Zinzendorf Hotel was 1940, so that makes her about 37 years old this time. I looked up, and there was a man standing in the doorway watching me. You really have a job, don't you? Sure, don't you want to help me? I would help you if I weren't so hungry. I got up off my knees and walked over to him. What do you mean being so cute when you are in America and saying you're hungry? Darling, I am an American and I'm hungry. Well, what are you doing with those gorgeous boots? They must be worth $100. They were dark red leather. Why don't you go sell your darn boots, then you could buy supper. Yes, I guess you're right. You see, I'm one of a group of dancers that R.J. Reynolds has brought to Winston-Salem to dance before the grandstand. Until 3 days ago, I was in the Chicago Civic Grand Opera, which is closed because of this awful depression. I'm so sorry I didn't understand. Here's my $5 lunch ticket book for Polite's, the hotel lunchroom. You can get a nice dinner for 35 cents and they'll give you all the tea you want. And I returned to my bucket and rags, scrubbing the floor on my hands and knees. An hour later, he returned with my meal tickets. I just used one. Now what can I do to help you? Well, do you hear that bunch of children in the next room? There are 40 children from 8 to 10 years old that in a room that used to be the hotel dining room. They're mean as a devil. You hear all that noise, and I have to quit cleaning this floor. It's about time for their class to start. Go in there where that wild bunch is and put them to work. Yes, and he said, and he walked away. The hotel dining room had closed because of the Depression, and they built that breakfast room with lights in the front. So I rented the dining room as a studio. In 2 minutes, it was quiet in there. I bet he blessed them out. I stopped and went to the door. He had them in lines, and he was teaching. I let him alone and finished scrubbing my floor. After the class was over, he asked if he could bring his dance troupe in to rehearse. Go get them. He wasn't gone 20 minutes, and he returned with an army of 40 dancers, and he put them on the floor. He was the director of the company. I didn't know then who he was. And he came back to watch them, and he worked them until they were dripping wet. And I went and I said, my name is Jacqueline, what's yours? My name is Alexis Karanoff. Why, you're the premier dancer of the Chicago Civic Grand before it went broke. You come in here and teach these children every minute, you're not busy, and we'll see about getting you a meal ticket too. I need your help. My sister's in the hospital having a baby, and I can't even go to see the baby, so you get back here and help me. Well, that baby is the niece is still living in the home place over here. Name's just come past me, but she's about, I don't know, about 72 now. And she was a dancer too. Besides Alex Karanoff, she met other interesting young male guests, men of unusual skills and knowledge, who were not forthcoming about their line of business. And they intrigue her, and she enjoys matching wits with them. And she asks the right questions and draws the right conclusions. And sometimes she has to involve the police. The details are in the book. She met the love of her life when he walked into her dance studio at Zinzendorf and became her second husband. But that was a few years later. She never outgrew her appreciation for a good man. She was 90 years old in 2001 when I took my husband Vaughn to meet her. He took her hand and bowed to her. And she arched an eyebrow and she said, "Oh my dear, wherever did you meet him?" This story is, you want to come up and show what she did? Tried to make him dance.
Play, Mom.
Rock on.
Well, he's missed it. But what she did then is she tried to get him, she put him in fifth position up there to start dancing. Now this story is not in the book, but it is legend around the studio. That huge 4-story building on 4th Street was always in need of repair, and the prison officials sent a group of felons to do some work on the building. Several men shuffled in work boots, and she took them right in the studio, lined them up, put the needle on the record, 1, 2 shuffle ball change. They had to dance before they could go to work on the building. Now she had a history with the prison system. She had preached at the penitentiary in her youth. There was an all-black Baptist church near her home, and she would creep up close enough to hear the preacher preach, and she was fascinated by their style, presentation, message, and dialect. And later she prepared a sermon which she would preach with gusto whenever she got the opportunity. And this is what she delivered to the prison population in Raleigh. The details are in the book. Picking up on Jack's tracks back in the early 30s. She was her own boss from the